Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the Dig In podcast. Today, I am so happy to have a new friend of Dig Insights join us, the very talented Betsey Chung, who's a veteran global CMO, and we have a lot to learn from her today. So, Betsey, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Jess. It's good to be here.
Yeah, let's start with an intro. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. So thanks, Jess. I am Betsey Chung, and I'm a digital transformation leader with quite diverse experience. So possibly one of the few global CMOs that started her career as a CFO and a P&L leader. And so I've had the pleasure to work with such great high growth companies. And most recently, for the past 6 years, the EVP and global CMO for TD Bank, previously with BMO and with American Express.
It's a great background, and we're going to hear a lot of lessons from that amazing tenure. But just a quick question, impromptu question to get us going. It's a Monday when we're recording this episode, and I'd love to hear what's one word you'd use to describe your week so far?
Oh, it's only Monday though.
Yes.
Inspiring. It's been very inspiring so far.
Good. That's a wonderful way to start. So let's dig in. I'd love for you to tell us a story. Our listeners really do crave inspiration from other leaders, and we think one of the best ways to inspire is to tell a story. And you've been part of multiple organizations where customer experience was really core to the company's success and certainly core to the marketing strategy. You know, American Express, BMO, TD Bank, all celebrated brands in terms of delivering a great customer experience. So talk a little bit about how a company can be intentional about customer experience. You know, I would think that any services organization probably knows that customer experience is important, but how do you make it a core focus and really a part of the ethos of an organization?
It's a great question. So I always begin with vision and right through to operations. So it really does start from the vision. So at American Express, which is a renowned customer experience leader, the vision was always to be the world's most respected service brand. And that is when I had worked there, and to walk in the halls and to see that as you walk through the lobby as a vision for the entire organization was really instrumental to the operations and the day-to-day of that organization. You know, the other organizations I've worked with, there could be a goal of winning JD Power, for instance, which is another aspiration. The third company was really around regaining customer experience leadership, and that was another aspiration. So depending upon where I've been, it's always been a core vision for the organization to have customer experience at the core of what we did. And then, of course, it translates into normal operating rhythms. So your everyday being was to strive to be, for instance, at Amex, the most respected service brand. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really a banking brand, and that wasn't the aspiration. So it was nice that the aperture was wider than that. And to be in the pursuit of service was something that really expanded our horizons in terms of working with a brand like that.
Yeah, it's so core, and for that to be the North Star for an organization, I think is really testament to, keeping the customer at the heart of things. So did you use any new frameworks or tools when you think about understanding and optimizing against what are those drivers of the customer experience? Did you approach it in a novel way at any of those businesses?
Yeah, there were a few, I would say, tools that were used, and it all ranges from the voice of the customer and really understanding that voice on not only a daily basis, but nowadays with technology, you can really understand it in real time, right through to even personalization. So personalizing that experience through omni-channel to every customer. And so as it relates to voice of the customer, a lot of times, depending upon the organization, there were some measurement frameworks. And as digital and mobile grew in terms of usage, that real-time, in-the-moment customer feedback, we were able to really analyze that. And so that's really around omni-channel listening, right through to personalization. So
Mhm.
in a number of the organizations I worked in, we use personalization tools. And in that piece, you can really understand out of the content that goes out to the customer, how can I create thousands of permutations of content so that for me, it's something different than, for instance, for you that appears. And so that was, the range of personalization and call listening type and listening to the customer type of tools. There
Mhm.
was also employee listening or colleague listening, which was really, really important. And I think that that's really fundamental to the ethos of the company. Um, Even down to, I still remember at Amex, our CEO at the time, when he did market visits, he
Mhm.
would start with a customer story and then would always sit with a call center to do call listening. And so that was really important because you gain through the side by side the employee listening part of it as well. And
Mhm.
so there were a number of tools that really spanned both pillars.
Mhm. So important for leaders to take that sort of hands-on approach, right? I think that that's so important, especially as you're trying to develop personalization at scale. I think the closer your C-suite is to the customer, the better, right? But it's not easy to do. I'm sure there's some setbacks in executing against your customer experience strategy. What were some of the most memorable sort of bumps in the road, and how did you overcome them when it comes to setting, the customer experience at the forefront?
Yeah, there's always, it's never a smooth path. And so
Mhm.
I still remember how, for instance, in each of these organizations, it was really important to make sure that customer irritants were addressed on a timely basis.
Mhm.
And those that affect millions or thousands of customers in terms of scale and severity were the ones that you really need to get at. A lot of times it affects multiple parts of the organization. So many parts of the organization need to be together at the same time to resolve it. And the speed of resolution is always one of those bumps in the road. But the way that I believe that you really need to address it is through a multidisciplinary approach, where people get together and you're able to knock off a customer irritant quickly.
Mhm.
And so that the best approach I've seen is one where it's a team approach and it's a team sport. And so those are sort of the bumps in the road, but how we've been able to resolve them.
Yeah. And those irritants is the term you've used. I think that's a really clever phrase for it. But those are those moments of friction, right, throughout the process where you're either going to gain customer loyalty or you're going to lose a customer. And sort of delivering in those moments that matter is something we really believe in at Dig Insights. We do a lot of qualitative and quantitative research to uncover those irritants as well as the delighters and help brands figure out a strategy for how to deliver and that experience is so important to identify those areas of friction and to remove them. Um, and how does a company know that they're delivering a great customer experience? What are some of the milestones that you have as a business, or maybe some of the performance metrics outside of just straight customer satisfaction? How else do you know that you're delivering?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I always believe it needs to be a really balanced scorecard across the board, and not only from a customer experience perspective, but also the employee experience, having scorecard for that,
Right.
because it's through great employee experience that you can inevitably deliver a great customer experience. And
Yeah.
so some of the factors that, depending upon the organization that we really monitored were, and really depending upon the channel. So overall, there was, whether you are on a net promoter score type of metric or you are on more of a legendary experience metric, depending upon the organization. It was one where you could really gain the voice of the customer, and it's usually scored. And so on a net promoter score, it was an 11-point scale. And then on other sort of more proprietary measures, it would be on a 10-point scale, for instance. Um, that was only one item, but to really get to in the moment. So I always say there's in the moment feedback or touch point type of feedback, and then there's your relationship with the organization. And so that is relationship feedback and the touch point feedback are related, but oftentimes in terms of the relationship feedback we gain, that is sometimes lower in score to the touch point. So, a touch point could be when you withdraw money or if you deposit money into your bank. Those are touch points. But how you feel about the organization that you bank with, that's the relationship. And whether they're looking out for your best interests, that's a relationship piece. And sometimes that is a lower sort of results than how that organization did at that particular point in time.
Yeah, it's interesting that the relationship between those two metrics and where there are gaps. I imagine that's a gap you have to shore up as a brand.
Yeah, it's really interesting because having monitored this through so many different organizations, sometimes premium solutions can drive, you think that having a higher price might drive lower customer loyalty. But what I found in the various organizations I've worked at is sometimes having a premium solution, but with a proper customer value proposition behind it, will drive higher customer loyalty than the free solution or the no fee solution. And so oftentimes we found our premium solutions driving higher retention and higher customer experience results than the one that's free or the ones that's no fee.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think it's because the consumer's expectation is going to be higher when it is a premiumization offering, right? And so when you can deliver on those higher expectations, there's more at stake for that customer experience.
Yeah, it's incredible because I've seen organizations like an Amex look at what traditionally other organizations call product, but they view it as customer value propositions. And that really dictates your role in this organization. So if I'm responsible for a customer value proposition, then I'm really going to develop access and experiences so that it can justify a customer value proposition that is in keeping with the vision of the organization. And so it was really interesting how different organizations associate things, whether is it a solution, is it a customer value proposition, or is it a product? And I think if it's a product, it's quite a narrow definition of what we do for the customer, because it's so much more than that in terms of developing a proposition.
Sure. No, it's the role that you're playing in that customer's life, and that is so much more meaningful than a product. That's important. So what's the biggest takeaway that you have from your experience in leading brands with this customer experience at the core? What's sort of the one learning you hope our listeners can take away?
Yeah, well, you know what? I always believe the buck stops with me. And in any organization that you're with, I always believe that if we can adopt the same mentality as the buck stops with me, then if you're going to be getting a customer complaint or a piece of feedback from a customer, or even a piece of feedback from your colleagues, if it's in the pursuit of being the world's most respected service brand or whatever the vision is, then it's a piece of accountability that's super important. And so I started my career in finance. And even as a head of finance, I believe that I was in the pursuit of a great customer experience. And whatever I did as a head of finance, that has to be in the pursuit of that. And sometimes people believe that only the front line is responsible for customer experience, but that's so untrue, because even in a function like finance, it's incredibly important for me to have felt that I can impact the customer experience in some way. And I certainly can in my function. And so yeah, I kind of I guess I sum it up by saying that's the DNA of an organization. That's really important. And so if we can all kind of adopt the beacon of the buck kind of stops with you, I believe then you can really resolve things quickly for the pursuit of customer experience.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. I love it. Well, let's turn to you as a leader, as a thought leader in your industry and also in the organizations that you've led. What is your most passionate opinion about being a leader today?
Yeah, I guess my very passionate opinion is that it's incredibly important to stick up and advocate for your team, or your colleague or your peer. And if for those that don't have teams, it's just really important to be able to do that. And really, it's, I guess, my most fulfilling times are when I can make a difference in someone's life. And it could be one person, it could be two people in your career, or it could be more than that. But if you're able to really make a difference, and it's probably for me one of the most fulfilling things that has happened in my career. And so I guess that's my personal belief. And to be able to stare myself in the mirror and say, you know what, I have advocated for people, and and I've kind of put my personal brand on the line for them. It's really, really important to me.
Yeah, I agree. It's important to me too. And I think one of the most rewarding things that I find as a leader is when, the folks that I'm mentoring or I'm helping develop, when you can give them that confidence that they might be lacking at certain points in their career or points in the week, honestly, right? We all have our ups and downs, but give them the confidence to take risks and to put themselves out there, because it's really easy for me to say, right? Go do this, you can do it. But for them to actually have that conviction and have that confidence, it's so rewarding to me when I see it play out. I'm sure you've helped a lot of people in your career kind of find their way and find their voice. And it's got to be one of the most rewarding.
Yeah, it's super rewarding. And I think that that's one of the things that has cropped up more often than not over the years in my career. People ask, how do I find my voice? And especially visible minority, people like me who maybe English wasn't their first language. And for me, English was my second language. I took years upon years of classes to really learn English. And it was not easy to find my voice. And what I would practice, one of the things that I share with people, what I practiced was I would write down in meetings, I would write down what I might want to say. And I would try to find the opportunity to say it, and in a voice that was hopefully clear and strong. And that took lots and lots of practice. And it didn't come day one nor day two. It probably came years after that. And it was just, you're right. It's just finding the courage to say something that I believed in. And so that took a while. But it's due to maybe the thanks of so many leaders that have helped me along the way. People like yourself and what you're doing with your team, and to give me the confidence to be able to just speak up. It has been a big deal for me. There's been so many great leaders that believed in me and gave me a chance in each of the organizations that I've worked at, and just eternally grateful for them, and will always remember them. And so, that's how leaders gain the followership they do as they, move from one organization to another.
I agree. And yeah, bravo to all those people that did help you find your voice. And you need to allow space for all different types of personality and skill sets and experience to have that opportunity to share. Especially, gosh, I remembered some of the first senior leadership team meetings that I would have been in. I did exactly what you said. I would write out what I wanted to say, try to find my moment, and probably sounded nervous as I was speaking up. And it's funny to think back, because I obviously come a long way, but it's so important to be given that space. So that's a wonderful story and lesson to learn from. So that's you as a leader, really memorable things there and helpful. In terms of your, expertise in the financial industry, what's your hot take on the future of the financial industry? Like, man, there's a lot going on. Where do you see things heading?
Yeah, it's so incredible. It's a global phenomenon right now. As you know, with rising interest rates, consumers are faced with variable rate mortgages, or they're faced with, um, how do I pay my rent is a common
Yeah.
question. So I really, really, really think that the time is now for a customer advocate. And if you are a financial institution, um, financial education is so important, because the just the common question of how do I pay my rent, that is a big deal. So do I
Yeah.
rent or do I buy? If I buy, how can I afford to buy? Where do I buy? And that's really important at this point in time. So the solutions that include pricing and financial education, so that you can truly be the customer advocate, and during a time of rising interest rates, is really incredibly important. So that's really what I see as an opportunity for many players in the marketplace. And it probably doesn't even stop at financial institutions. Like, I think that that probably goes to say, like, the same need is maybe needed in retail and
Hmm.
consumer packaged goods, in technology, truly, truly to be that customer advocate and to be able to provide the content that's needed to consumers at this point in time is needed, full stop.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's very meaningful across industries, and that ability to truly understand your consumer so that you can meet them where they are. And certainly in many industries, educating as you go is really important to be that trusted advisor, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
critical.
That's
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, let's turn to the final dig. This is all about you as a consumer, as a person. So feel free to take off the professional hat if you wish for a moment. I'd love to know, what's the last product or service that you bought on impulse?
Yeah, so I just bought a tennis racket, and that was last week. I've gotten back into tennis recently, and so I bought a tennis racket. It was just the frame without it wasn't even strong.
Without the net.
So,
Oh,
so it was one of those things, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I've got to get back into it. And so it was a local small business that I bought it
mhm.
at, down the street, and just really nice to support them. They've been in business, I think, for 40 years, and so it's nice to see small business owners really get back at it and thrive really during
Yeah.
this time.
Oh, that's great. So tennis, you're not into the pickleball craze. What do you make of that?
Oh my gosh, I'm really into pickleball as well. That was my
Are
first
you?
before the tennis racket, and I'm so confused when I go between the two sports. So
Yeah.
I was just at pickleball this morning where I hit it like a tennis. I was, I hit it so hard. Uh, it felt like I was smashing the ball, and that's totally not the strategy in pickleball. You have to be really skillful, and you have to place the ball properly. So I am into the tennis and the pickleball
Both. Okay.
as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. My son, he's 12, but he almost got kind of sidelined at tennis lessons because he was essentially approaching it like a baseball bat, and it was just kept flying over. We had to put him in timeout a little bit. Um, so tell me a category or a brand or maybe even a product that you could rationalize any price point for. You just have to have it in your life.
We've already said that I'm a big fan of sports, and my favorite sport is actually basketball. I
Mhm.
can't play it, but I can justify the price of going to a basketball game. And so I love live sports, and I can, like, my daughter's learning economics, and she just happened to cover the Lakers in her project, and I was a pro at giving her advice on the Lakers and the elasticity of the pricing of Lakers tickets. I said, well,
Oh, that's amazing.
if they, they're a winning team, they've got LeBron James, they're going to be fine in terms of pricing for those tickets.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I too love sports. I'm a big NFL fan, and we're recording this the day after the divisional round for playoffs.
So I'm
But
sure you're preparing for that. Is that?
oh my gosh, yeah, my voice is kind of lacking today because of all the cheering I was doing. But yeah, a couple more games to go. So brands have distinct personalities. What's a brand that you would date, and perhaps what's a brand that you would marry? And it could be the same brand, but maybe not.
So my husband would say, because I dated and married him, we met when I was 20 years old. So I think I would say the Four Seasons in terms of date and marry.
Hmm.
And you, as you know, Four Seasons, it's actually Canadian originated, which
I
is,
didn't know that. Very cool.
yeah, can you imagine? So it originated in Canada, and basically now it's a global brand. The customer experience of Four Seasons is just amazing. I just really believe, as I've been in various properties, just perusing. Sometimes I'll eat I'll eat there or something like that.
Hmm.
You can't afford to stay there, and so you kind of go and kind of just experience what it's like there. And so I really like it. I think they do such a good job, and I didn't realize that it wasn't all owned by the same sort of the operations of the Four Seasons is sometimes owned separately depending upon the country, I had heard. And so to make sure that that's a consistent customer experience from one property to another is a big deal. And
Yeah.
even when you phone them on the call center, I feel like they're really great. Down to the people who clean the rooms, really good. And so every single touch point has been really good. And so I think that that's one that I would feel I could date and marry.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice tie back to customer experience because, like you mentioned, those moments that matter along that journey. So, good way to wrap it up. So, finally, what keeps you inspired at work and in life? Leave us with some inspiration, Betsey.
Oh, well, you've just inspired me, firstly. So I think that to that point, what really inspires me is just meeting new people. And my new people become just people that in my inner circle. And to have that circle be wider and wider and wider through time has been such a pleasure and a privilege to be able to meet people that have a great shared vision and that truly care to make a difference. And that's really what inspires me. And I think that that's why, you and I are on this podcast together and just talking about things in general and feeling a shared passion for something.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Right back at you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Dig In podcast. We are so pleased that you're a new friend of Digs, and we hope to be seeing a lot more of you. So, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Jess. I appreciate it. I appreciate being asked.
Until next time, thanks, guys.